Bear down.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a bonus episode of Warp, the completely unnecessary Star Trek podcast where we do unasked for audio commentaries of Star Trek episodes. But tonight, we go
bonus.
Inside Picard. My name is Sean.
My name is Matt.
And I'm Min Win.
And I'm Jake.
Hey!
Wow,
Jesus.
okay.
Yeah. Jake came blasting in from the rear
in.
there.
Blew out the speakers.
It's all right. We'll take that down in post. Hey, Jake. Good to have you.
Hey, guys.
Always good to have you.
I'm working as usual.
You're a little strong. Maybe back off the mic an inch or two.
I'm using something
dildo.
new for
a lamp bulb. You're using a tin can.
Oh, now he's gone. He hung up.
You pissed him off.
He got
man.
offended.
You made fun of him, and so he just bailed.
Yeah.
Oh, he's
Hey.
back.
Well, here we are at episode 9?
Hey, we are watching episode. We're
9.
talking about episode 9,
Damn.
Almost
What's the title?
done.
the
Almost done.
penultimate episode of season 1.
Oh, I
That's a
thought
great
that was
word.
the title.
That's a great word, penultimate.
I love the word penultimate.
I'm a little tired of it.
You know what's a good? You know what else is a good word, man? If penultimate doesn't do it for you,
No, not yet.
anti-penultimate is the third from the last one.
Anti-penultimate?
Anti-penultimate. Ante is
Mm.
the third. Is because it's the one
Third.
before. Anti
Yeah.
means before.
Second from last.
So it's the one before, the second to the last. So it's the third to the last.
What about the dis-anti-penultimate word? Let's go German. Let's
It
tack
reminds
on.
me of German. Yeah, where they
Yeah,
just
right?
their way of making words is just to stack other words together and be like, this is a new word. We just took 5 short German words and made one long German word out.
Do you think German has the longest word in known existence?
That is an excellent question.
I have no idea.
Maybe Icelandic or Swedish or some.
I mean, something like Finnish, where they
Yeah.
have like 18 consonants in a row in their words.
that'd be a good corrections corner. We'll have to look into that, dig into that.
Okay,
Well,
well, the
you-
longest word in English.
Yeah.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Okay, I googled longest.
Anti-establishmentarianism.
I googled longest. What's the longest word in the world?
Uh-huh.
But it gave me an English. It's
That's
giving me
okay.
English words instead.
Yeah.
of-
We'll take the English for now.
The longest word in English is pneumo ultra microscopic silicovolcanoconiosis.
Whoa. That's like a disease or something, a medical term.
It refers to a lung disease contracted from the inhalation of very fine silica particles, specifically from a volcano. So if you breathe in the shit that volcanoes spew out into the air, you can come down with a bad case of pneumono-ultramicroscopic silicovolcanoconiosis.
Can you
Ooh, I
imagine
said
the
it fast that
doctors?
time.
Yeah,
You
that
did
was
it.
really
That
good.
was good.
Yeah.
That was really well.
Really. You should become a doctor, I think.
I bet the longest word is like Welsh or something like that.
Mm.
Like Welsh words have lots of letters in them, sort of seemingly randomly. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to do Corrections Corner for Inside Picard or if I'm going to skip
Just
over
gonna-
these episodes.
Yeah,
Mostly
no.
because I don't relish the idea of listening to 2.5 hour long episodes of Inside Picard. It was delightful listening to a regular Warped yesterday because I was like, oh yeah, this is like a normal length episode of this show.
Yeah.
So, Sean, what's the title of this episode?
Yeah, what are we doing here?
Ept in Arcadia Ego, Part
What?
1.
Part 1.
Oh, that sounds fancy.
Written by Michael Chabon and somebody else I didn't write down.
Let's talk about the title. Let's talk about the title first. You guys should both recognize
Arcadia.
that phrase. Yes.
Hmm.
They talk about that phrase in the play Arcadia, which we did years ago. They have a conversation about Et in Arcadia Ego. It's when
What does it mean?
Septimus is tutoring the girl, Thomasina,
Right.
and she's doing her French to English translations, and he's correcting her translations. And they
For
talk
those who
about
don't know the play, what is the play?
Arcadia by Tom Stopper.
Okay.
You were in it.
Yeah, but for our listeners who don't know.
Nobody's listening to this.
Matt, just let's give people the benefit of the doubt.
Jake's gonna have to listen to it eventually, so
Tom Starker,
you might not know Arcadia.
It's a play.
Yes, and they talk about this particular phrase, which means even in Arcadia, there am I. It's Latin, and the usual interpretation is that the word the I in that sentence is death, right? So the sort of paraphrased way of saying it would be that even in paradise there is death, because Arcadia is this sort of like paradisical concept, right?
Okay, and so Arcadia is like heaven, would you say?
It's sort of paradise,
utopia,
like a sort of utopia type place.
It's like Elysium.
Yes, exactly. And even in those places, there is death, which is a very appropriate title for this particular episode because it takes place in a sort of paradisey place, and bad stuff happens. This episode was frustrating to me.
Well, I mean, the problem.
I don't know what you thought about it, Sean.
It's a second to last episode, so it's all set up, right? It's all set up for the last.
How can it be all set? Oh, you're about to end it. There can be no more setup.
Well, but the final battle is coming, right?
Okay.
So all this episode, and the final battle is going to happen in the last episode. So all this episode is sort of it's a lot of recap to let you know what has come up to this point, and just setting up where everybody's going to be at the point that the final battle happened.
Yes, you're right. There was a lot of sort of moving the pieces into place for the big final confrontation.
So it was kind of boring.
It sounds disappointing.
It was boring, and it was also like it was kind of disjointed. Like they were throwing all of this stuff at you in this episode. There was all kinds of there's a bunch of new characters. There's a bunch of new concepts. I mean, it was just a lot and it didn't feel like it all flowed very well together.
Well, because
I just didn't really like it.
There was a lot of exposition because they're introducing a lot of shit, but they didn't have the time to sort of let it happen organically, so they have to do information dumps and it was weird episode.
It was written by Michael Chabon, who ordinarily is a very good writer, but it was written by him and Ayelet Waldman, who is Michael Chabon's wife. And if you don't know,
be a great pair.
If you don't know about Michael Chabon's wife, she's a real piece of work. I love Michael Chabon. I love his books. I love his writing. I love the way his mind works. His wife is a terrible writer, and somehow he married her. And she
my guess is this was
for decades
written by her, and he sort of punched it up maybe a little bit.
Maybe. My tendency is to blame all of the things that I didn't like about this episode on her. Because I'm already I'm so biased against her. No offense, Michael Chabon, in case you ever hear this, but I don't like your wife. I don't even know her, but she's one of those people who's she's sort of you know how Stephen King's wife is also a novelist, but has never been nearly as successful as he is. It's one of those relationships where one of the writers is the husband is really super famous for writing, and the wife is, I'm a writer too, but she's not really.
Right.
And I just don't like her writing. And she's sort of been self-promoting herself through her connection to him for decades now. And I just don't.
Has she done other stuff like books or?
Yeah, she's technically a novelist, right? Or short stories, or I don't know. I've read a couple of things she wrote and thought they were terrible. So,
do you know if Michael Chabon has done other TV or movie stuff, or he's mainly a novelist as well?
He's written some other stuff. I think he wrote or was part of the writing of the first X-Men movie. He's a big comic book nerd, so I think he wrote a draft of one of the first X-Men movie. I don't know how much of what he wrote actually made it into the movie, but he wrote a script for one of the Spider-Man movies. I think he was one of the writers on Spider-Man 2, maybe. Mm-hmm. So he's done some other nerd stuff outside of Star Trek. So anyway, I just had to get that off. I had to get my Islet Waldman irritation off of my chest. Now
so you did right. He did write Spider-Man 2. You're right about that.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
He wrote John Carter.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's pretty much it.
Do you want to hear the idea that I had? I had a dream last night about a podcast.
Please.
So I had a dream last night that Min and I were doing a podcast together, and the premise of the podcast was that in the first 30 minutes of the episode, I would have Min describe to me what he thought the plot was of a movie he has never seen.
Just based on the title.
Just based on whatever he knows about it from the title and what he's absorbed in culture, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of movies that Min has not seen.
Yeah, sure.
So in the dream, the first chunk of the show would be you telling me, like, for example, what do you think the plot of Gone with the Wind is? Or I don't know if you've ever seen Gone with the Wind, for example.
Yeah.
So then
that's a great example.
So then you would tell me what you thought the movie was about, the story of Gone with the Wind. And then we would end the episode. You would go away and watch the movie and then come back. And the second half of the episode would be us talking about the movie now that you've actually seen it.
That's
sounds good to me.
I thought it sounded really funny. Like, I woke up and I was like, that's a good idea for a podcast. Because I think it would be really funny to have Min try and describe movies he has not seen. Like, I just think that that's a funny idea.
Concept.
And then,
hey, if you can get a editor.
I mean, I could technically learn how to edit. I don't know how, but I guess theoretically I could. Yeah. If somebody would have to teach me.
Jake, what do you edit with?
I use Audition, yeah.
Do you think was it pretty easy for you to pick up?
Yes. Considering I used it the first session of Warped ever, and I'd never so much as opened the program before. Yeah. I think, we did okay.
Well, you've made it to 100 plus now. Congratulations. Yeah. Warped has been a joy to listen to. I've actually had time recently to catch up on some of the episodes where we're watching the movies. They're a lot of fun to listen to.
I just listened. I was listening to Encounter at Farpoint today, and I just right before we started recording, I just listened to the part where Aaron tripped and knocked over all of the equipment. And,
Damn, Aaron!
And then Jake put a little bit in where he's talking to. He's like, "This is Jake, and we've had a little malfunction, but we'll be right back." Like he put a little disclaimer, a little
because the Indian food came in the middle of the first part, right?
Yeah, it was when she was going to get the Indian food that all hell broke loose. Anyway, in Arcadia Ego Part 1.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Directed by Akiva Goldsman, which I think is maybe another reason this episode is not good, because I think Akiva Goldsman is a hack. But whatevs.
He's directing the next Lonely Island, Akiva?
No. It's the one who is a terrible writer but somehow keeps getting hired to make movies and television.
He's gonna make sure you never get another job in the industry again.
Yeah, I mean,
Matt's taking shots at everybody today.
Yeah, I know, right?
His beverage is refreshed, and he is angry.
Mad. Just mad, you guys.
He hasn't had any social.
I couldn't buy any toilet paper yesterday. I went to the grocery store.
Which one?
Like you do,
Ralph's.
Okay, and they were out of toilet paper.
Was it crowded or was it?
It was crowded. I went at about 11 o'clock in the morning on a Friday. But yes, it was crowded. It was not unwieldy crowded, but it was, yes, there were people there. And they were completely out of toilet paper. They were completely out of paper towels. They were completely out of lunch meat. The whole lunch meat section was completely empty. They were completely out of frozen. They were completely out of frozen veggies. The whole frozen section was cleared out. It was a mess, you guys. It was a mess.
I went on the Thursday morning right when they opened. I was there to get paper and stuff. So that worked.
Yeah, I think that's the trick, is to go first thing
Early.
right when they open.
Yeah. At the Asian supermarket, all they were out of was ramen. I was so disappointed. I'm like, I wanted ramen. Everything else was there, like produce, fruit, no eggs or dairy, but yeah, that and ramen.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a frustrating trip to the groceries.
Dear listeners, if you've got extra TP, Matt could use some. Please
Send us an email.
Yeah. Send us an email with some TP attached.
Email warptoast@gmail.com and let me know where I can pick up your toilet paper in the San Fernando Valley area.
On the corner.
Within a 4-block radius of.
No, he'll travel for it. He will. He'll take an Uber.
I'm willing to go as far as Glendale if I have to.
So, man,
Yes.
how do you think this episode of Picard starts?
Searching for toilet paper.
Yes.
Yes. In a flashback, of course.
No, it doesn't.
Oh,
Oh, what?
He tricked you. Sean tricked
Oh. It's finally the orgy.
you. Yes, they finally.
finally start with an orgy.
L. Ron and L. Ron Hubbard and
Ron Hubbard.
Elnor.
Elnor, sorry. Yeah. It's as the weeks go by, all of those names and those societies, those organizations, they're just going.
Well, get ready because you're about to get 5 more new names.
I don't want it
from
anymore.
this
I don't want it
episode.
A
anymore.
lot more character, a lot more things going on.
Bunch more new people this week.
All right.
So we start out on La Serena.
Yep.
They're traveling through the transwarp coil. If you recall, the last episode ended. They found Soji's homeworld, and she found a way to get there super fast compared to the Romulans, who were also on their way there. But they were being
Narek's
followed
following.
by a Romulan ship, which we assume is Narek, although we haven't seen him. So they're in the warp coil, and they're coming through, and they're sort of shaking around in their chairs. They bounce out, and they're like, oh, planet. Looks like Earth. And she's like, yep, that's it. And she calls it Capellius.
Yeah, she recognizes it. She's like, that's where I'm from.
What's the planet look like?
Looks like Earth.
Oh, cool.
Very blue-green. And it's got the two red moons off to the side.
So I Googled Capellius just because I was curious where that name comes from and what the origin of that word is, because I assumed it was not a made-up word. And the first link is Capellius is a German band from Berlin that plays metal on drums, double bass, cello, and clarinet. The band's name is taken from E.T.A. Hoffman's short story, Der Sandman. So then I clicked on The Sandman, which is a short story from 1816, written in German by E.T.A. And I guess there's a character in that book, in that short story, whose name is Capellius, an obnoxious lawyer come to carry out alchemical experiments. It's like some kind of creepy little horror short story. But anyway, that's the name. That's where the word Capellius comes from, apparently. I thought that was a weird pull because I couldn't
Either
make
that,
any connection.
or
I
they
couldn't
just
find
made
any connection between that word and this episode. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Star Trek.
No, there was no creepy lawyer.
Yeah, I couldn't make the connection. Anyway, go on, Sean.
They start to take on fire. Narek has come through the transwarp coil, and he starts shooting at him. And
Yeah, we get a pretty good fight scene, actually.
Jake, you're going to be very excited because they all sit down. And what shoots out of the chairs?
A jingle.
Seatbelts?
Oh.
Yeah, they sit down and
Jingle
the
plays.
Kentucky Fried Chicken jingle plays.
Do they have one?
Another weird poll. Like, I don't know what. I couldn't figure out how that connected either. I was like, Capellius, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Arcadia.
Colonel. It's going to come together.
They have seatbelts on this ship.
Yep.
Getting back
So
to
they're
Capellius.
pretty good fight scene between the two ships.
Pew 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 pew. That kind.
La Sirena manages to disable Narek's ship,
Right?
and it's gonna go down, and then all of a sudden, out of the transwarp coil, the Borg cube comes through.
With 7 of 9.
They're like, "What the hell? It's working? Where did that come from?"
That was really cool when the Borg ship came through.
Was pretty cool.
The warp thing. It looked really cool the way they filmed it.
And they're like, they see that they've pretty much damaged the ship to where it's gonna crash on the planet.
So they let it live.
Well, Soji's like, Picard's like, beam him aboard, and Soji's like, no, fuck that guy. He was gonna, they're trying to kill my people, and he's like, and he says something about, we don't kill war. You kill in war, but you don't if you can take them wounded, you take them. Anyways.
Okay.
It says there's a difference between killing when you're in the middle of a battle and just watching somebody who's already been disabled die.
Right.
So because the ship is they destroyed his ship, or it's about to blow up or whatever, and she's like, let him die, and Picard's like, that's not how we do things around here, sweetheart. But then before they can even deal with that whole problem,
Romulan ships.
No. Here's what I mean about this just being a weird, disjointed episode. Because suddenly these giant flowers appear in space.
Space orchids.
They look like orchids. They've been launched from the planet below. So you see these big, giant space flowers. And they sort of wrap themselves around the ships. So one kind of swallows Picard's ship, and one gets Narek's ship, and then the other ones kind of like latch themselves on.
Yeah,
they're not big enough. They're not big enough to like wrap all the way around the Borg cube, so they just kind of latch onto it like a remore or something like that, like some kind of like
plunger
sucker. Yeah, they latch onto it. And it sucks all the energy out of the ship. They lose all power.
It shuts down completely.
So the lights go out. And the ship starts falling down towards the planet because
this is the weirdest metaphor for like a blowjob ever. It's just me. Yeah, just go on. Just go on. Keep going. Keep going.
I'm tempted to stop and explore that further, but
isn't it right? Like these flowers wrapping their lips around.
I don't think I have it in today. I really don't think I have it in me.
I'm sorry. Keep going. Keep going. We'll stay light.
So they start to crash towards the planet, and Picard sort of goes into some kind of weird trance.
Yeah, this was weird too. Like
never gets explained. Like they don't explain why, because all of a sudden he goes into some kind of weird trance and he says, "Thank you for coming."
Yeah, thank you all for coming. And they're like, what's going on with Jean-Luc over there? And I could not. I think what you were supposed to think, based on what happens later in the episode, is that it was some sort of seizure from his illness, right? Because they spent a lot of time talking about his illness. But in the way that it played out, watching it made it seem like he was getting a message from somebody.
That's the way it looked to me.
He was being mind controlled.
A mind meld of some kind with the planet, with the inhabitants on the planet. That's how it read when you were watching it. Yeah, absolutely.
It was completely unexplained. Which,
and they don't explain.
Another one of these, like, this is a weird, disjointed episode because they never bothered to explain what the point was of that little moment. Except that Picard is sick, which everyone finds out about, right? Because he's like, oh, and then they're like, Picard wakes up, he's in the sick bay, right? There's like a jump cut, and it's later.
When he says thank you for coming, that's when they go to the credits.
That's when the credits happen. So then coming out of the credits, he's in sick bay. He opens his eyes, and Dr. Girardi's there, and he's like, what's going on? And she's like, we landed on the planet. The thing sucked out of all of our energy, but it landed the ship safely.
Mm-hmm.
We still don't have any power, but the ship is otherwise fine. And And she's like, at first I thought you banged your head, but you didn't. There was no, you didn't bang your head. So I found this old tricorder, and I scanned you, and you've got aromatic syndrome, which we already knew because this goes back even to the old show. That he has this brain abnormality that he's had for his whole life, but is now starting to cause problems, right?
I remember. I don't remember.
He was back on
Earth about it when David Paymer was on. Did they talk about it?
They did, and in fact, if you had watched the previously on,
they showed that
again,
scene, right,
to remind you.
Well, actually, I knew that he had a bad heart, but I didn't. What's this syndrome?
His heart is fine because they replaced it. He's got an artificial heart.
That's okay. Sorry, that's what I meant. Mm-hmm.
He's had this brain abnormality thing forever. Okay. And they talked about it back in the original series. And so he's always known that he had this thing, but he's never had any symptoms. It's always just been this thing that could become a problem, but so far in his life had never become a problem. But now in the new show, when he was trying to get permission to leave Earth and he had to get like a doctor to clear him, there was a scene where his doctor friend came and they talked, and his doctor friend was like, you know, that thing in your brain, it's actually getting worse. So you probably should not be going off into space right now. And Picard was like, fuck that, I'm going anyway.
Clear me.
So now Dr. Girardi now knows because she scanned him, and he's been trying to keep it a secret, but she now has figured it out because she used her tricorder on him. And then they go to the bridge, and he sort of says, everybody give me, they're like sort of cleaning up the debris from the crash landing. And he's like, listen up, everybody. And they all turn and look at him. And he's like, I have this thing. It's terminal. There's no cure, but I don't want anybody to make a big deal about it. Anybody who mentions it ever again is going to piss me off.
Yeah, he says anybody who treats me like a dying old man can fuck off or something like that.
I think he says piss me off. Well, piss me off. I don't think he says fuck off, but anyway. So now they all know. Everybody knows that Picard's dying, and Picard's like, so what's going on while I was out? And they're like, well, the ship landed. We still don't have any power, but we can take Soji. There's a settlement like 5 miles away or whatever. We can take Soji and take her to where she comes from. And so that's what they decide they're going to do. But before they do that, they're leaving the ship to go to the town, but they see that where the Borg ship crashed off in the distance. And they're like, well, before we go to the town, let's go check out the Borg ship and see if maybe Elnor and Hugh survived. Because at this point, they don't know that Hugh got murdered. So they're like, let's go check.
Seven's on board,
and they don't know that Seven is there. But they're like, we want to make sure Elnor and Hugh are okay. So let's go see what happened to the Borg ship. So off they go, walking off to the Borg ship.
Yep.
And the Borg ship is huge compared to these other ships, isn't it?
Yes, it's a gigantic thing. Huge. It's the size of a city. You know, it's huge. Which is why it looked so cool when it came out of the like warp coil thing. Like, it was huge on the screen.
It wasn't like barely fit through the wormhole. Thing. Looked cool.
We've all been there before.
It was like trying to push a large thing through a small hole. I'm trying to think of a good example that isn't disgusting.
That's perfect.
Like giving birth, you know?
Yeah. My mind was going in a different direction, but yes, that's much more palatable. It's like giving birth.
Plowable.
I meant to say palatable, but my tongue.
It's like watching an episode of. It's like watching a Gallagher concert.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's a lot like watching a Gallagher concert.
Yeah.
Sure.
Move on.
They get to the
cube.
Yep. Go ahead, John.
And they come on the cube, and who's there? Elnor and 7 of 9.
Nah.
First, the XBs recognize Picard, and one of the XBs is like Locutus, and Picard's all
right.
Whoa.
Picard's all like shook because he doesn't like it when we call him Locutus. Before he can react to that, Elnor comes scampering over like a. Elnor has the personality of sort of a golden retriever. Yeah, he's like really happy to see Picard and like
runs up
gives
and
him a
hugs
big
him.
hug. Like, yeah, it's really sweet.
I thought you said all of the XBs had been jettisoned into space.
No, the Borgs that had not been deborgified. They were still in like hard freeze or whatever. They were still in like suspended animation.
Gotcha.
Those were the ones that she ejected into space.
Shortly after Seven had woken them all up, they all got ejected.
She was trying to wake them up to turn them into an army, and before
the blue
she
balls
could,
moment for you.
Yeah, before she could, they shot him out into space. So Elnor's super happy to see him, and then 7 of 9 is there, and she's like, "Are you here to help, or are you here just to make more problems for me?" So then they're talking. 7 and Picard are talking, and she tells him that Hugh died, and Picard's like, "That's very sad." It kind of gets brushed off, frankly. Like there's
I don't
one line about it, and then they
other than
move on.
to just get Ellen off the cube. There was really no point to the scene when they went them going to the cube.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, just to have 7 and Elnor be part of the finale, which I'm assuming they will be part of next week's big finale. But yeah, so Picard's real sad because Hugh died, but he brushes it off pretty quickly because he's got other problems that he's dealing with. And Picard's like, "Is there a way to turn on the long-range sensors? We need to find out where the Romulans are because they're coming for us." And she's like, "I can get the long-range sensors turned on." And they do. So we see Rafi and Rios like standing in front of like a hologram sort of display, and they see all of these Romulan ships are heading for them. 218 warbirds.
But they're not coming through the they're not coming through the transwarp coil. They're just coming through regular warp.
Which is how our gang got in front.
Just standard warp.
Gotcha.
Because the Romulans were already on the way, but we got a head start because our guys used the transwarp thing. So they're in front of the Romulans now, but the Romulans are still coming, and they're like a day away. They're going to be there in like 24 hours or something like that. Mm-hmm. So that's very bad news because they got no weapons.
Now there's a time clock.
We got no weapons. We got no ship. We're in big trouble here. So then it's time to say goodbye to Elnor and 7 of 9 because Picard's got to take Soji on her way. So they have this sweet scene where Elnor says, Elnor's like he wants to come with Picard because he knows now that Picard is dying. And because Dr. Jurati couldn't keep her big mouth shut and told him off camera, but you get the impression that that's what happened. And Elnor's like, Picard's like, "No, you need to stay here. You need to help 7. You need to help take care of the XBs. They need your help more than I do." And so they say goodbye to each other. And 7's like, "Good luck saving the galaxy, Picard." And he's like, "That's not my job anymore. That's your job now." And then he walks away. Right? Did I miss anything, Sean?
Sounds right. A lot of this is fuzzy to me, but I think you're right. That sounds right. So they go to Capella Station. And
what do you see there?
Lots of synthetic beings.
Lots and lots.
And I thought I saw titties for a second, but I think they were just man pecs.
Man boobs.
But man, they were round for man boobs. Like they had, because they weren't like drooping man boobs. Like they had serious like lift to them, but they were globular. Like they weren't like,
globular.
Sean,
well, like
you were aroused.
They had a spherical.
I knew what you meant. I know.
But I didn't. I didn't have the energy to rewind and go back and see if they were actually titties. But
and jerk to it and all of that. Yeah,
I did not notice that, but I would be surprised if there were nudity just out of nowhere.
That's why I was surprised. Well, and then as as everything went on, like there was no more nudity.
Uh-huh.
All the women did have tops on, and there were men who were topless. So I just assumed it was just a guy that just had particularly round man boobs.
You sounded so disappointed when you said the women all had tops on.
Well, it is on streaming, remember?
Sure. And it is sort of a classic Star Trek utopian, like, sort of pleasure planet vibe, like
where nobody wears clothes.
Everyone's in really good shape. They're all wearing like skimpy. The women are wearing sort of midriff bearing outfits. Like, it's very old school Star Trek where we just live on this planet.
They all have the coloring of Data.
Oh, pale.
Yeah, they have the sort of goldish shiny skin that and the gold eyes that Data had. Because they don't look like Soji. Soji just looks like a person, but these all look like androids, like classical Star Trek androids.
Yeah, and they meet one named Arcana.
Get ready for the names, man. This is where the names are about to happen.
The first one is Arcana.
We meet Arcana.
Pretty smoking hot.
Cool. That's easy.
She has a twin sister named Saga.
Right. Because remember, they're all twins.
They're all twins.
Mm-hmm.
Are you writing these names down, Min? There will be a quiz later.
Yep. I am doing it just as much as Aaron is right now.
Names are important.
Yep.
And Arcana recognizes Soji, and she's like, "Oh, you're back." And then she recognizes Picard, and she is like, "Oh, you're Admiral Picard. You're Data's captain." And he's like, "Yeah, I am." And is that when she does the weird face thing where she like goes over and touches his face?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't understand the point of that either. This whole episode is a mess. This episode's a mess.
There's a lot of bizarre shit in this episode that does not pay off.
I don't understand the point so much of what happens in this episode. Because she goes over to Picard and she's like, "Can I touch your face?" And Picard's like, "I guess. We're not under social distancing right now, so I guess you can touch my face." And she like traces his like the lines on his face, and she's like, "These lines indicate age, but also wisdom and dignity." Yeah. And then she's like, "It's fascinating." And it's like, okay, well, and that's it. That's like the only thing that happens in that moment. And it's like, what was the point of that? I don't understand the point of it. So anyway, then she's like, "Soji, you're back." And Soji's like, "Yes, I'm back." And she's like, "Did you complete your mission?" And Soji's like, "Yes, I completed my mission."
Oh, geez.
But I found out what's going on, but I also accidentally have caused all the Romulans to come out.
They're all on their way.
Picard's like, "How many of those space flowers do you have?" And then Rafi's like, "Please say 218, because that's how many Romulan warbirds are coming." And Arcana is like, "We have 10. We had 15. We used 5. Now we have 5 to get you here. Now we have 10 left." And they're like, "Well, that's not gonna." Yeah, they burned up on entry when they were coming into the atmosphere. You know, they came in hot, and so they, you know, that thing where when you come into the atmosphere and it turns all red and it gets all hot, like Apollo 13 style. Yeah, it was like that.
Arcana, is she the Kylie Kardashian lookalike? I'm looking at photos of I'm looking for Arcana Star Trek Picard, and the only one I don't recognize is this female with dark hair that looks a little Kardashian to me. Is that Arcana?
They all kind of vaguely look like a Kardashian because they're all sort of artificially tan and they all have like long dark hair.
Well, the Kardashians are a little synthetic, so it makes sense.
Sure. A timely reference, man, as always.
Yeah, I get what you're saying now, and yes, you're right.
So they're warning the sins of the incoming Romulans.
Right. And then our old pal Brett Spiner, Mr. Data himself,
Data
reappears. He comes
Data.
on scene, but he's not playing Data. He's in human mode. So he's got regular skin tone, he's got regular hair, he's got regular eye color. He's not a Romulan. He's not a robot. He's not an android. He is Dr. Soong Jr. So Dr. Soong, man. See, this episode is so fucking dumb. Like, this whole episode was extremely frustrating.
Does Dr. Soong die at some point in time in Next Generation?
Yes.
Okay. Then they couldn't. Because if he was still supposed to have not specifically been killed, I was like, why didn't they just have him be the Doctor?
Well, he was old. He was a fucking million. He was a million years old on the old show. Like it was Brent Spiner in old man makeup. So imagine how much older he would be to still be alive in this time frame. Dr. Soong Min is. Do you know who Dr. Soong is?
Yeah, he made Data, right? He created Data.
And this person that Brent Spiner is playing, Brent Spiner plays all the versions of Dr. Soong. Like he played Dr. Soong on Next Generation. He played an ancestor of Dr. Soong on Star Trek Enterprise.
I never realized that.
And now he's playing Dr. Soong's
son.
He plays every variation of Dr. Soong and every variation of Data, like because he's Data, he's Lore, he's B4, he's Dr. Soong, he's Dr. Soong's ancestor, and he's Dr. Soong's son. So Brent Spiner has played 6 different variations of this character essentially, and they all look exactly like Brent Spiner.
But he does an amazing job with everyone, I assume.
Yeah, I mean he's a good actor, but his character in this episode is weird. This whole episode is weird. I don't know how many times I can keep saying how weird and nonsensical this episode
was it cool to see Brent Spiner even though he wasn't playing Data? Was that like a awesome moment?
It would have been. Well, we already saw him once because we saw him in the flash
way back when. Mm-hmm.
It would have been cooler to see him as Data than to see him as Dr. Soong.
Or like I said, if it had been Dr. Soong, I think that would have been cool.
But maybe he didn't want to wear all that old man makeup. I don't know.
Yeah, he just looks like modern day Brent Spiner.
Yeah, he looks like how Brent Spiner looks if you see him in person
right now. Yeah. And so he introduces himself. He says, "I'm Dr. Soong's son. I'm a crazy mad scientist, just like my dad was, and I've created all of these androids that you see here around you." And Picard's like, "Okay, well, we've got some news for you because bad people are on their way to destroy all of this." And then we meet Sutra, right? Another android, Min.
Mm-hmm.
So Google Sutra, Star Trek Picard, Sutra, Sutra. And what you will see is that she is played by the same actress who's playing Soji, right? Soji is normal skinned,
but she's got Data skin.
Sutra has Data skin, right?
And
she's the same like brand of android as she's built off of the same template as Soji and Taj were.
Rio Caesar, he calls her Jana.
Right.
If you remember,
Rio Caesar goes, "Oh my God, that's Jana." Do you remember who Jana is, man?
Yep.
He had met her. He had met her on his old ship when his captain murdered her.
That's right.
And then killed himself. Remember all that?
Yeah.
Part of Rios's tragic backstory. Everybody on this show has a tragic backstory. Every single character.
That was Sutra's twin.
That was Sutra's twin who had been sent on that mission, so she's stayed behind, but that's who that is. Min, if you're looking at Google and you just Googled Star Trek Picard, if you click on the images tab, if in the third row, at least on my screen, is a picture of the space flowers trying to absorb the cube. Do you see it?
Oh, I see. Okay.
You see the space flowers?
Yeah.
So now you got an image in your mind of what that looked like. It was weird. So anyway, Sutra shows up and she's like, I'm Jana's remaining twin, and she's wearing one of those midriff bearing outfits, and she's like, she's sort of the leader of the androids, it seems like, and she starts asking them about the admonition, which is that vision that the Romulans have of the
everything blowing up,
right?
Yes.
And Sutra's like, I don't think that message was actually meant for the Romulans. And that's why it drives them all insane when they see it. I think that image is actually a message meant for synthetics. And Dr. Soong is like, that's fascinating, but how can you prove it? And she's like, she's like, Dr. Girardi, you witnessed the admonition, right? Because Commodore O mind melded with you and put it in your brain. She's like, yeah. And Sutra's like, well, I can suck it out of your brain because I studied and learned and taught myself how to do the Vulcan mind meld.
Right.
So you don't have to be Vulcan to do it.
Which, again, bizarre. A bizarre storytelling choice. I've never heard of anybody not Vulcan being able to do Vulcan mind melds. So I don't know if there is any historical precedent for this or at all. That maybe there is that I just don't know about. But I've never seen anybody not Vulcan do a Vulcan mind meld before. So it was weird.
Sorry, this sounds like fucking Star Trek sacrilege right here.
I know. I mean, I would have to do a deep dive, I think, and do some Googling to figure out if they've ever shown a non-Vulcan doing the mind meld before.
Blast a Trek Twitter for that.
I mean, the Trek nerds might hear this and know exactly the episode where that did happen, but I can't think of one.
Twitter at us.
Yeah, tweet us. Yeah, send us a Twitter. So she mind melts with Dr. Girardi, and that's when we get to see like the full unedited version of the admonition, where we've only seen sort of little glimpses and pieces of it before. Yeah. Now we get to see sort of the whole vision. And long story short, because it's boring, the admonition is a message from a race of synthetic beings that live on like the other side of the galaxy or someplace. And it's a message to the synthetic life here in our galaxy, saying to them, we exist and we will help you in your fight, because your fight inevitably is going to come down to a war between organic life and synthetic life. And the synthetics will win the war, and we're going to help you to win your war against the organic people.
Oh my God.
That's
not comforting.
No, it's weird.
No.
The whole thing's weird and stupid. But that's the message. We find out finally, and that's what the admonition was about all along. So the reason the Romulans were going crazy every time they tried to see it was because it wasn't really intended for them in the first place, and it was driving them insane. Whatever. Whatevs.
But it's also a bad message as an organic, like, oh, we're going to be wiped out.
Right. Because remember the Romulans had this myth about the destroyer. They kept calling Soji the destroyer because the image is of synthetics destroying all of organic life if this war comes to pass.
So the Romulans are right in a way, right?
Yeah, kinda. I mean, they're
if you're an organic life form, yeah.
We are organic life forms.
But Picard. Picard is a diplomat and a man of peace. So he's going to try and he's not going to accept the fact that a war is inevitable. He's going to be. We can sit down and talk and figure out some sort of compromise and a way for us all to live in peace and harmony. That's Picard's whole deal.
That's true. Yeah.
So Dr. Soong is in his lab doing his weird mad scientist stuff. And Dr. Girardi goes in to see him. And he's all pissy with her because she killed Bruce Maddox. He's like, you extinguished one of the great minds of the universe, and you owe a debt to society for what you did. And she's like, yeah, I know. I feel bad, too, about the whole situation. She does. She feels really bad.
Yeah.
They ask her about it earlier, right before the mind meld. She has a little monologue where she talks about it. We skipped over that part because it was boring. And anyway, Dr. Soong's like, look at this thing I'm working on. And he shows her this transparent, it's a body, but it's transparent. You can see all the like inner workings and shit.
She calls
She's
it
like,
a golem.
She calls it a golem. She's like, you made a golem? And he's like, yeah, I did. And she's like, did you figure out how to like put a brain inside it? And he's like, no, I'm more of a body guy. Dr. Maddox was the one who knew how the mind part of it all worked. And she's like, well, maybe, he's like, you owe a debt, so maybe you could help me figure out how to do the mind transfer. So I think what you're supposed to get is that, again, this was all a little confusing, but I think what you're supposed to get is that Dr. Soong wants to put his mom, because Dr. Soong is now an old man, he wants to put his own brain into a synthetic body.
Right.
And he wants Dr. Girardi to help him.
Sense.
That's, I think, what you were supposed to gather from that little conversation. Then we get a scene with Sutra and Soji. They're talking outside, and Sutra is trying to convince Soji to come and to join the side of the synths in this upcoming war. And she's still reluctant to accept the fact that the war is inevitable. You know, she's still on Picard's peace side of the equation right now. And so she says to Sutra, I don't believe that this is inevitable. And I think that, you know, maybe we can solve this some other way. And Sutra's like, what are you talking about? We just found out that there are 218 Romulan warbirds on their way here to blow this whole planet to hell. And she's like, I don't think there is another solution.
It sounds like in a lot of ways she still feels like a human herself.
Yeah, she does. She absolutely, I think, does.
She knows better, but I mean, since she feels like she's lived an entire life as a human.
Sure.
And I think that by this time she's spent enough time with Picard that she's kind of gotten over her reluctance to trust him that she was dealing with a couple of episodes ago. She feels a little closer to him now than she did earlier in the series. So it makes sense that she would be, you know, not wanting to immediately jump over to the android side of the equation. Mm-hmm. Before they can get too deep into that conversation, though, here comes Narek. The robot, the androids captured him when his ship crashed, and they come dragging him in. In fact, Sutra says, look what the cat dragged in. And it's Narek, and he's all banged up from his ship crashing, but they've captured him. And Soji's like, "Oh shit, there's that motherfucker again." Then we get Rios and talking to Girardi. Girardi is holding a cat, and Rios comes in, and we learn that the cat is Spot 2. Spot was Data's cat's name on TNG.
Yep.
And this cat looks just like the old Spot used to. And it's a clone. They made it. Dr. Soong made it. It is an artificial cat that they named Spot 2 with a real lack of imagination. They just named the cat Spot 2.
Ridiculous. This whole episode.
I mean, it was a little Easter egg for fans. Like, oh, look, there's an orange cat. And it's Spot 2. Like, but still, it was like dumb. Like, who names a cat Spot 2? That's like something a child would do. Like if your cat got run over when you were a kid and you got another cat, you would just want to name it the same name as the cat that got run over. Your parents.
That's classic Simpsons joke that their black cat
that's Snowball or whatever. Yeah, that's right.
Because the original cat was white and was named Snowball. They got a black cat. They called it Snowball 2.
That's right. So what's going on plot-wise? I'm just going to skip ahead because this is really... What's going on plot-wise is that Raffi and Rios are leaving to go back to the ship and get it up and running for the upcoming battle that they know is coming. Before they leave, Arcana gives Raffi this like device, and we don't really know what it is yet. But Arcana says to Raffi, "This will help you fix your ship." And Raffi says, "I don't know what this is, and I don't know how it works. It's some weird piece of alien technology." And Arcana's like, "You just have to use your imagination." And Rafi's like, okay, well, that's vague and elliptical, but okay. Again, terrible writing. Terrible writing. Like, it's so clearly a Deus Ex Machina for next week, and it's just
Right.
It's just it's just bad writing that Rafi would not say, please don't be so weird and tell me what this actually does. But instead she just lets it go. Like, no human being would behave that
connect
way.
it to my ship.
Right. No real person would just be like, oh, okay, I'll use my imagination then. Like, that's so stupid. This episode really ticked me off. I'm getting madder the more I'm talking about it.
The more you talk about it.
The more I talk about it, the more I'm reminded how much I did not like it.
Well, it's like I took notes, and this episode was so fucking forgettable to me that, like, I have notes that are supposed to trigger, like, what happened in the scene, and I just nothing. There's, like, nothing coming into my head as to what happened during that scene.
It was just in one ear and out the other this week.
As you're describing it, I'm now remembering, oh, yeah, that's right, that happened. But, like, looking at my notes is not triggering a thing in my head right now.
Okay.
So some of the synths are helping, and others are not. Some of the synths are on the side of the revolt and the war, right?
Well, it's yes. I guess that would be fair to say. It's unclear how it's.
Yeah,
all
I don't think anyone's
out.
motivations are real clear.
Nobody has really made up their minds yet, one way or the other. That's what all of these conversations are sort of about, is what should we do? Also, Sean, don't you think that the Golem is another Deus Ex Machina, and they're going to put Picard's, they think Brent Spiner thinks that he's going to put his brain in there, but instead Picard's going to end up putting his brain in there, and somehow it'll be Star Trek 3 where the Golem ages to look exactly like current day
Picard, like Jean-Luc Picard,
but he
like
won't. But he won't have the weird brain thing that's killing him anymore. Don't you think that's exactly?
Yeah, that's definitely positive. I hadn't thought of it, but
you don't introduce an empty body that a brain can be put into as a concept if you're not planning on putting somebody's brain into that body. You know what I mean?
Sure. Sure.
And they've spent so much time, especially this episode, talking about how sick Picard is, that it just made sense to me. Like, as soon as I saw that thing, I was like, Picard's brain is going to go in there, and that's going to cure his illness.
That's how season 2 goes on, as Picard as a synthetic being.
Picard as a synth, but looking still exactly like Patrick Stewart. Because there's no way they're going to put gold paint all over 80-year-old Patrick Stewart.
That would be time for that.
Think how cool that would be to poor Patrick Stewart. He's like, I don't need this shit. Like, I didn't sign up.
You got to put it all over his head. Like, he's,
Oh boy.
Well, what was the response in the Trek Twitterverse then? Was there general?
It seemed like most people gave it a pass, assuming that next week
will be amazing.
It's going to wrap up all of the stuff that they've sort of introduced.
That's how, like modern television, the second to last episodes almost always suck in a season because they just have to set up so much for the final scene, the final episode. So if they haven't already set everything up.
In some shows, the second to last episode is the best episode of them all. Like Breaking Bad, the second to last episode is amazing.
Of the series, though, right?
Yeah.
Not just the season.
No, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I was thinking about the series finale.
Gotham, the second to last episode of the series, is the best episode. Is way better than the final episode. But
is that the penultimate episode?
It would, yes, it would.
Well done.
Nice callback, Jake. This is why I'm glad you're on these calls for moments just like that. So anyway, Rafi gets this thingamabob that's going to be important later. And then she and Picard say goodbye to each other because she's going back to the ship with Rios to get things up and running. Picard's staying behind to keep talking to the androids. And Rafi can't resist, even though he told her not to make a big deal about the fact that he was dying. She does anyway, and she hugs him and she says, "I love you." And then she's like, "You don't have to say it back to me if you don't want to, but he does. He says, "I love you" back to Rafi, and it's a sweet little, it's a sweet little moment between the two.
It was a sweet moment.
It was sweet to see how they've sort of healed over the course of the season.
Absolutely.
They've healed that rift that they had between them from the past. So that was nice. And then she and Rios leave. They're off to go fix the ship. Then we see Narek. Narek has been put in sort of the brig. He's behind a force field wall, and he's being guarded by one of the androids. Saga, I think it is. I think it's Arcana's Saga.
Yep.
And
can I just say really quick that
yes,
that Arcana Saga sounds like a Japanese role-playing game.
It does. I thought so too. I was like, Arcana and Saga sound like video games.
It's the Arcana Saga.
Have you guys played Arcana Saga 3? It's the best one.
Oh yeah, all the odd number ones are good. Like the opposite of Star Trek movies.
Yeah. Final Fantasy 9, the Arcana Saga.
Yeah.
So he's in jail and he's like trying to fuck around and manipulate the girl who's guarding him.
Yeah,
He's like,
thirsty.
He's like, I'm really thirsty. Can you bring me some water? And she's like, she doesn't know what to do because they've never had prisoners on this utopia planet before. So she's like pretty easily manipulated. And she's like, she's about to lower the force field to give him some water when Soji comes running in and she's like, stop. Don't trust him. Don't listen to him. Don't do anything he says. Every single word out of him is a lie. And then Soji and him have this scene where he's like, I really loved you. And she's like, stuff it up your ass. And then he finally drops the facade and he's like, we are coming and we are going to kill
dropping hellfire on this whole planet. Yeah. Everything on it is going to die.
Kill every single thing on this planet, including you. And she's like, fuck you. And then she stomps off. She doesn't say fuck you, but that's the impression.
Not happy.
He was trying to like trick her the way, but it didn't work because Soji was like, I figured your shit out.
Narek's a diehard here. He's a ride or die.
I can't wait for him to die. I'm assuming he's going to die.
Well,
and I'm really
hope so.
You're like, die, please, die.
Remember I talked about like they were going to have him redeemed in some way, you know, and I started fearing that when they were having the conversation initially in this scene, I was like, oh no, don't redeem. And then when I was like, oh thank God, they're not going to redeem him. They're going to kill the motherfucker.
They kept him bad, which was I liked that. I don't want Narek to turn out to be good at the end of this. Like he's done too many terrible things to be redeemed. I think Dr. Jurati also has to die, even though because she murdered Bruce Maddox. Like she flat out killed him. And I think she has to die. Storytelling wise, for that to make sense, she has to die. But we'll see. So Soji stomps away and she goes and finds Picard. And Picard is sitting in Bruce Maddox's old office and he's trying to call Starfleet to tell them what's going on. And he can't get through because their signals are being blocked. Presumably the Romulans are blocking their signals. So he's trying to call
also far away
and ask for help. Yeah, okay, sure. And he can't get through. He and Soji have this conversation because she's just come from Narek and she's all upset. And she's talking about how she couldn't understand when Jurati killed Dr. Maddox, why she would do something like that. But now she does understand it because she's just had this conversation with Narek. And now she kind of wants to kill Narek. And you can feel this is her like, I'm going over to the dark side of the Force.
Right. She's switching over to the Sith.
And Picard kind of senses it because he's like, you're talking like you're about to do something really terrible. And what is going on, Soji? And she's like, don't you think it's important to fight for what you believe in or whatever? And Picard's like, I think it depends. I think if you're talking about the victims and abusers, it depends on who's holding the knife. Like they have this weird conversation about like what the right thing to do is. But you can tell from the way she's acting and the way he's reacting.
Is it okay to take a life, to save a life?
Yeah.
What's the logic of sacrifice?
Okay kill. Yeah. And you're just like, things are not going well for poor Jean-Luc. Once again, by the time we get to the end of this episode, it will be time for the jingle again, because
yes.
Things take a dark turn for poor JL in this scene, in this episode, as we get to the end of this episode. So then we go back to Narek. He's still in the cell, and Sutra comes in, and she tells Narek, I'm going to help you. She's like, I need you to get what I want. I'm going to let you go. So she lets him go, and they kill Saga. They stab her in the eye with a bird brooch that she was wearing on her, on her lapel.
Bird brooch.
Yeah, like a blue, it was like a blue glass pin on her chest, and they stabbed her in the eye with it. And she lets Narek go, and so we see Narek running away and heading for the Borg cube.
Right. Yes,
like a false flag operation.
Sutra has decided she wants this war to happen, right? So she's she let him go in order to convince the others to join the fight. Because then we have
the death of Saga
as a motivator. They've killed another one of her. Because now we have this big scene where she's giving this big speech in front of all of the other androids. And Picard's there, and Dr. Soong is there. And my note here says, everyone betrays Picard. So, Jake, I would like you to revise the jingle so that instead of everybody hates Jean-Luc Picard, it should say everyone betrays Jean-Luc Picard.
Everybody betrays Jean-Luc. It's not the same.
Yeah, it's
not the same number.
No. Change everybody to everyone, and then it works. Everyone betrays Jean-Luc Picard.
Yep.
So anyway, Sutra gives this big speech where she's like, they killed our sister, even though she secretly was responsible for that. She's like, they killed our sister. They're coming for us. This whole idea of trying to come to some kind of peaceful resolution is bullshit. It's war. We need to get ready for war. And Picard gets up and gives a classic Picard speech where he's like,
right.
It doesn't have to be this way. We have enough
room.
That was we have enough room.
The last note I wrote on my book, Jean-Luc speech.
Yeah, my note says Picard's speech doesn't work. he gives a big speech where he's like, there's enough room on the La Sirena for all of the people in this colony. We can all just get on the ship and we'll take care of you. And I will go back to Starfleet.
Find a place
I will go back to Starfleet and I will become an advocate for you, and I will convince Starfleet to drop the ban. And then Dr. Soong is like, no, you won't. You
sort of
tried
like flashbacks.
That. You tried that back when the Mars thing happened, and it didn't work then. Why do you think it would work now? And so they all turn on him, including Dr. Girardi, who decides because Dr. Soong is like, we're going to have to put you in prison, Jean-Luc. We're going to put you under house.
Put him in house arrest, and her. They say.
And he's like, what do you mean you're putting me in house arrest? And he's like, well, I can't have you going around talking to the androids and trying to change their minds, because we've all decided that this is what we're going to do. So we're locking you up, Jean-Luc. And he's like, this is outrageous, but it's happening. And then Soji also turns on him. He's like, Soji, you're on my side, right? And Soji's like, nope, I'm not on your side anymore, Jean-Luc. Sorry. I'm taking the side of my android brothers and sisters. And then Dr. Girardi is like, hey, I know I'm a human, but I really want to be on your side and finish the work that Bruce Maddox.
Everything here is what I've always dreamed of, and this is beautiful to me, and yada, yada, yada.
Every single character turns on Jean-Luc, and he's all by himself. Because Rios and Rafi are gone to the ship, so he doesn't even have them to help him.
And Eleanor and Seven are still on the cube.
Eleanor and Seven are on the cube, so he's all by himself. Everyone betrays Jean-Luc Picard. His speech doesn't work. They haul him off, and then the last little thing that happens is we get a quick shot of Commodore O. She's now in full Romulan regalia. She's on the bridge of the head of, Warbird or whatever.
The main Warbird.
The main Warbird. And she's like, how far away are we? And they're like, we'll be there in 22 hours or however much it is. And then we see a wide shot of all of the Romulan Warbirds. 218 Romulan Warbirds, all heading for the planet to blow it to hell. And that's the end of the episode. Dun, 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 cliffhanger.
Oh.
It's a big dumb mess, and I hated it on 90% of it.
That's the problem with episodes like this. It's like it's so much setup and there's no payoff at all, because all the payoff is supposed to come in the next episode.
But it also feels a little contrived, and like some of the choices have been forced, and some of the
it was incredibly contrived and had all kinds of like just bad, dumb, like cheap story, just like storytelling tricks. Lazy storytelling. Yes. Lazy storytelling, lazy character development. It's never clear at all why any of it is really happening the way that it's happening. It was just bad.
Are all real murky.
They've got to do this. They've got to have a full writer's room, though, right?
No, they had a full writer's room. They had like 8 or 10 guys working on the show.
No, but that's an interesting point you brought up, Matt. Like, if it is the guy and his wife like brought in to like do the main push on the story, then I could totally see it changing the dynamic in the room about what people feel comfortable about suggesting.
Yeah. Well, Michael Chabon has been on the show all season and was the showrunner for this first season.
Right.
So this is his. I mean, they developed it with other people, obviously, but he's been sort of the driving force of this particular story. So, I mean, it's maybe next week all of this will pay off and it will feel more cohesive and more.
I have high hopes. Most of this season has been very well done, so I'm hopeful that the last episode is well done.
Yes, I guess that's fair. This season has been largely very, very good, so maybe they will pull it off. I guess it would. It will be interesting once the season is over, because this is a 2-part episode, to watch these 2 episodes back to back and see if it makes a little more,
if there is all the
sense.
MacGuffins they present in the first one get paid off.
I mean, I still can't forgive Rafi just being handed a magical device that is going to fix the ship somehow. Like, that's just garbage storytelling. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
And the Borg cube is still out of commission, yes?
The Borg cube, yes. And what we saw in the previews for next week is that Narek has made his way to the Borg cube, because we got a little snippet of a scene where you see that Narek is talking to Seven and Elnor about everything that's been happening. So presumably the Borg cube will come back into play. Presumably all of this stuff. Hopefully Elnor dies. Hopefully
Elnor dies?
No, not Elnor. Narek. Sorry. Hopefully Narek. No, dear sweet Elnor. No, if they kill Elnor, I'm done with this.
I can't.
I'm never watching this shit again if they kill Elnor.
I was getting pretty close. Nobody else here watches Walking Dead, I don't think. Is that
no
correct?
No.
That's correct.
But I've said for a long time that if they ever killed Daryl, I'm out. And I thought he was going to die in this last episode I watched, but nope, he survived it. I can still
keep watching.
So that's it. That's in Arcadia Ego Part 1.
Wow.
It only took us. We've only been recording for an hour and 45 minutes.
That's not bad.
And by the way, man, this was a short episode. This was a short episode, man. It was only like 48 or 49 minutes, like this episode of Picard. So it was, and it still took us an hour and 45 to get to cover everything.
Yeah, well,
good Lord.
I'm kind of appreciative that you had an episode to kind of exercise a more critical muscle. Not, you haven't been critical before, but if we were just gushing all the time or just critical about the show, that becomes tedious. But we want to like praise the show when it's exceptional and like say, hey, you should have done a better job. And these other times, that's the most interesting.
I think we've been pretty fair across the board.
I think so too. Yeah.
We've attacked it when it deserved it.
Yeah,
We
like
haven't
when she
attacked it
was
for
walking
being-
around in a circle trying to remember
Yeah,
her
that
childhood
episode-
trauma. That episode was garbage.
That's true. Yeah.
Now,
Well,
I know
We don't attack it for dumb reasons like a lot of people attack it for its, SJW.
We're not
bullshit.
attacking it for some weird political reason, and we're not attacking. There's a difference between attacking and constructive criticism, and I think that we
Absolutely.
are.
Right.
I think that we are talking very honestly about the things that we like and the
Yep.
things that we don't.
So I'm sure
that's
they have some.
What a recap show should be.
Yeah, I'm sure they have some epic moments lined up for the final episode. But if you could think back, what was your number one favorite moment from the entire season so far?
Good question.
Okay. Well,
Pizza.
you're right because they have. We saw in the previews for next week. There is a big fucking space battle coming next week.
Yeah.
So
Is it a
we're
longer episode next week or just
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
But we're definitely going to get some big action moments next week. Sean, you want to
Favorite
go
moment?
first? Or you want me to go first?
Oh, I mean, I probably the Troy Riker stuff. I mean that.
Yes, I would agree with you. That was certainly the most sort of emotionally satisfying episode.
Yeah.
Right.
I think my favorite was the one where they went down to the planet and had to wear ridiculous outfits and do funny accents. Like,
Oh,
Jazel.
with Bajazel.
yeah, the episode with Bajazel. Like, that episode was a lot of fun. I mean, it had some
Right.
dark stuff in it because that's also the episode where you see Icheb get killed, and
Right.
there's some darker moments in that episode, but there's also just a lot of fun.
Goofy.
in
Well,
that
and the
episode.
part where Seven beams back down and just blasts the shit out of her
Yeah, really satisfying.
Poor
Yeah.
Bajazel.
was pretty.
So I
satisfying.
think that might be the best. If you take out the sort of nostalgia factor of seeing Riker and Troy again and
Right.
how enjoyable that was, if you take that out of the equation, I think that episode was called Stardust City Rag. I think that
Right.
might be the best episode overall of the ones that we've seen so far. We'll see what next week brings, but
Well, I had a question. I had asked Matt last week, but you guys had ran off because you had things to do. If you could be a character on this Star Trek Picard, who would you want to be?
oh yeah, you said you wanted to be the dog. You
Well,
said
aside from Girardi, I said
you made
Girardi
the
first.
two worst choices I've ever heard. This is why I want to do this Tell Me the Story of Movies You Haven't Seen podcast, because I love the way your brain works,
Sure.
and you come at things in a direction that I can never predict and that I always find really funny and entertaining. So that's why I think it would be funny to do a podcast like that with you, because I can't wait to hear what your brain comes up with when I ask you to tell me the plot of, Casablanca or something.
Yeah, that'd be interesting because I
Yeah.
know a little bit, but it's not.
Min's choices of who he would want to be were Dr. Girardi, who murdered her lover and is having horrible PTSD as a result of all of the trauma she's been through.
Really
Or-
interesting life.
Or the dog. No, you wanted to be number one, which actually that one I can support because that dog seems like he has a pretty cool life. I mean, he's running around on a French vineyard. Like, life's not so bad for number
Not
one.
so bad.
Dr. Girardi is a genuinely bizarre choice.
I thought, well, for me at the time, Girardi, she hadn't gone out into space. This was her a new opportunity, a new frontier. She was getting a lot of.
Hated every second of it. Every time, all she's done since they left Earth is complain
Her
about how much
experience has
she
not
hates
been a positive one throughout this series.
Yeah, but it's been wild, right? It's been like ups and downs, and
We didn't describe it, Min, but in the very first moment of this episode that we just recapped, the very first thing you see in this episode is Dr. Girardi, because they're flying through the transwarp thing, and it's making the whole ship shake really bad.
Yeah,
like-
I would hate that.
And all you see is Dr. Girardi hiding under a desk.
That's me. That's me.
going,
Yes.
Make it stop.
Yes.
Stop.
Yes. But it'd be cool
That's
to
not
experience it.
You're saying that you identify with her. That's not the same thing as who you would want to be. The who you would want to be is Elnor. Because Elnor is hot and a badass and can slice people's head off.
I sort of
Or
feel
like
like
maybe
I'm
Rios,
Elnor.
right?
Yeah.
I would want to be Rios.
Oh.
Rios is cool. Rios is a cool cat.
Ship
But he's
captain. That's a
troubled.
pretty
Rios
sexy
is-
role.
Trouble.
He's Elnor is a little too aw shucks for my liking. I'd rather be Rios.
Rios is dark.
I mean,
though.
obviously
Rios
Elnor is
a difficult
badass
path.
and cut people's heads off, but he's also like
well,
Rios
is
has
badass.
wisdom.
Yeah, Rios is badass.
Mm-hmm.
He
In a different way,
outflies
but he's a
Narek, and he outflies Narek, even though he gets surprised at the beginning of this episode. Now I want to go online and find Rios Elnor / Vic, which I guarantee you it's out there.
No, not yet.
That'd be a good thing to bring to the finale of this season of Inside Picard.
For sure.
Although the way you describe it, I might want to be one of those sexy androids.
You want to be a sexy android?
Are they sexy android? They don't look sexy android. Like they're not dolled up per se.
No, they're not sexual.
They look
Stylish.
like they're at a Greek Ren fair.
Fancy. Yeah.
They're sexy in the sense that they are young and in good shape and are wearing skimpy clothes. But they're not explicitly sexual.
Yeah. Gotcha.
It's not like that episode of Next Gen that we're going to watch pretty
In a few
soon,
weeks.
where they go down to the sex planet.
Oh.
Everyone's giving each other
they're basically
massage.
all wearing
Oh.
sheets. They're basically wearing sheets that are tied around their body in interesting ways.
Are we gonna do something special for
Early
that episode?
Next Generation is weirdly horny. Now that I think about it, like there's a lot of episodes about people getting horned up.
I don't know what's so weird
Yep.
about that, but okay, sure. If you want to say it's weirdly horny.
What about Laris and Jabon on the Living in the Vineyard in France? They would be
Yeah.
good characters to be.
Yeah. But you'd have to have another person be, like you'd want someone cool to be your Jabon if you were Laris and vice versa. So
Right.
that's
you
not
wouldn't
just
want to be a Laris without a Jabon.
Mhm.
Or
Yeah.
vice versa.
Mhm.
All right.
Let's
so
end the
are
episode.
let's give them the specs.
Thank you very much for listening to Inside Picard. Please go to iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts to rate, review, and subscribe. You're in quarantine right now, motherfuckers. You have no reason not to go to iTunes and
Yeah.
click 5 stars
And
and
like you
write
say-
a little review. It doesn't take much from you, but it means a lot to us. So please go and do that. In addition to that, you can follow the show on Instagram at Warped the Podcast, on Twitter at Warped Trek. You can follow me on Twitter at Host Warped. You can follow Min to learn about our D&D and Call of Cthulhu podcasts and live streams at Wet Main. You can go to patreon.com/warp to give us money, become a subscriber, and get access to bonus content and additional materials.
That's right.
I'm
There you
done.
go. All right. Well,
Bye,
unless
Sean.
anybody has anything they'd like to add,